You know you won't tell nobody, no. Rose, I might pull up flexing on these niggas like a rose.
Hey guys, it's Haley.
And Riley.
And we're coming at you guys with another video today. This is going to be our first video for our Being Black in Denver. So you'll be able to get like two sides to like viewpoints of around a topic, whatever the topic we choose at the time will be. This topic just so happened to be about the DPS schools closing down all the minority schools, and not just the fact that they're minority schools, but they're like successful minority schools that are being closed down and combined and meshed together with predominant white schools that aren't as successful as our schools. But we're being made to like abandon our communities, our neighborhoods, and move and better their communities and their neighborhoods. And that's what this video is basically going to be all about. It's just this experience that's happening right now with my kids. And I'll also put a link in the description box for you guys to click and sign the petition. Put your name on the petition and share it, send it around, have whoever sign it, just try to save these schools. Yeah.
I don't know. It's like just very simply the school where where the kids that Haley's kids go is a 130-year-old school. Like just on that alone, I don't understand why they're trying to close it. But they gave like 4 days notice for all the parents. We basically showed up to a meeting today and we're bulldozed. They just kind of bulldozed a whole group of people. And the school is a minority school. I was one of few white, like it was me and maybe another one or two white people in the crowd, and then a majority of the white people were on stage telling people that the school is closing and that their kids are going to have to go somewhere else, and basically avoiding answering any questions by parents or just not having information.
Right. I mean, they know about this since last summer in 2021. And they didn't tell the school or the parents until this Monday, which is like October 24th of 2022. So it's just like, well, they didn't even give us the chance to even rectify 30 kids. That's the difference that they're saying, like the ratios are off and all those things. We're only missing 30 kids in the whole school.
They continuously mention money. They barely meant, like they tried to structure it like we're talking about kids, but all this the gentleman that kept speaking talked about was money. And so the number that it turned out that they're missing 30 kids is $210,000. It's not even a house in Denver, and that's what's shutting the school down. That's the number of kids, that's the dollar amount that they're shutting this 100% all year long attendance school with excellent testing scores and excellent educators is getting shut down for $210,000.
And they're getting shut down and combined with a school that a nice amount of kids in Columbia in my kids' school right now have already just transferred from due to being discriminated against, or just in general like bad principal, like bad teaching, like there's just no like authority. Even the staff from that school showed up to the to our sit down today in the auditorium just to explain to the Board of Education from her experience of being a nurse in that school building. Like there's no education. The kids aren't there. The kids are always in the hallway. The kids are like it's nowhere near where our education is, or how our children are. And that was important, that a nurse from their school came to our school to express that to the Board of Education. Like her room and the nurse's office is full of kids that have nothing wrong with them, just because they merely just don't want to be in the classroom, or they're walking around the hallways, or they're ditching. And they're talking about ECE 3 to 5th graders with this behavior. and she noticed the difference in our school when she comes over and helps, because we don't. So the thing with Columbian is we don't have a full-time nurse there. We switch nurses out because there's not enough school nurses right now. So she's experiencing multiple different districts because they are at schools on certain days only. So like Monday to Wednesday or Monday to Tuesday she's at this school, and then Wednesday and Thursday she's at this school, and Friday she's at this school. So she was just letting them know comparison of the two. Her home school is Trevesta, but she comes over to Columbian sometimes to fill in, and she was saying from her experience, no kids ever find just any old reason to come to the nurse's office. Like, even if they come to the nurse's office for something, they immediately want to go back to class. There's not kids in the hallways. And like when she looks into those classrooms, all the kids are in attendance, looking at the board, learning, getting educated, and our test scores show it. Like our attendance show it. We're like a very successful school that's just mainly based with Hispanics and Blacks. There's a few Asians and Muslims like go there because is it the Muslims that have the head shabab is what is it called? The head shabab or something.
I can't.
Like they can't show their face or like it's the most diverse school around. The school that they're trying to move our kids to, it's like 60% white.
It's genuinely a neighborhood school. There's 185 students at this school, and it's like 20 kids maybe in each classroom. It's not a huge school, and it's excellent. It's an excellent school, and there's not in-school police. There's genuinely teachers enough for the students, for everyone to have attention paid all the way through 5th grade. And the school they're going to is the opposite. It's not enough time to pay attention. The nurse said herself, I won't have the ability to care for all these kids on the professional level outside of that these kids don't want to be here. I won't have the ability to give them the treatment they need just based on space and availability. I can't do it. And
Yeah.
That's so heavy. The only thing that they had, the only response the whole time was just money. They're $97 million short.
Our kids' education is based off of their money in their predominant white schools. That's what it all comes down to, because when you look at when you compare the end of the year testing that is required and attendance and overall just grades throughout the whole year, you got Columbian schools, the schools like minority schools sitting at the top. And you have a lot of predominantly white schools that's sitting underneath us. And what's happening is, instead of them breaking down and consolidating schools and moving students to schools that are already successful and showing that they are performing at not only where they need to be, but above where they need to be, they'd rather have us go to their schools where they're not where they need to be on attendance. They're not where they need to be on end of the year testing. They're not thriving like our school and our community is. So for them to move our kids instead of moving those kids from that school to our schools, moving our kids to that school is just a big sign that just lets you know that it's based around race and it's based around money. They only want to fund like the predominant white communities. They don't want to put this money into our kids, our Black and Mexican communities, even though we're the ones who are getting them the school funding, because we're the ones that are making the scores and coming up and keeping up with attendance, things of that sort. But what now will happen is that our successful, thriving community, our school, will be closed, and we will be forced to go to their school, which is not thriving. And then once we integrate there, they'll start thriving because they'll have our test scores, they'll have our 100% attendance all year. And then it looks like their system have always been thriving and ours wasn't thriving, because that's exactly how they tried to word it today too. They tried to make it seem like our schools wasn't thriving as much as their schools were. But then when you pull up the actual, on their website, the testing and where each school stood, our schools were better than those schools. The only difference is race and money. The environment there is totally different. Their community is totally different than what ours look like. We look different as a community.
They did nothing but erase people. Like, they started the opening of this, the first clip, and the where the blame was supposed to lie, where all the people in this meeting were directed. The blame was directed at gentrification. Like, it's this outside thing that happens that nobody can do anything about. But this is Denver. Denver could have done something about it. These houses that are getting bought and turned into expensive homes, and all the poor people getting pushed out of all these areas where the homes or these schools are closing. All of these schools are closing in minority areas, in poor areas where most of the people are going to be black people or Hispanic people or minority people. It's what happens. That's where they're closing them. And I struggle to understand. They kept explaining, well, because we're a small school, Colorado funds us at 215 students, and they don't count our students. They just fund us at 215 students. And we only have 185. So we're 30 students short. But what I'm struggling to understand is, so larger schools then, and this is sort of an assumption, but a larger school like Trevino, I may be messing this up, but Trevesta, they had 330 kids, like 330 kids. So I'm assuming that means those kids get counted and that school gets paid by the number of kids rather than a basic number.
Right, and it's also like,
it just seems like it would make more sense to send
a lot of the elementary schools here, their ECE, early childhood, like 3-year-old program, 4-year-old programs, full day programs are in separate buildings. They're in their own buildings on Colfax, and they're actually acknowledged as ECE, or like some schools have the ECE attached to them. Our school is one that has the ECE attached to it, and technically we hit that 215 when you count ECE students, but they said because it's separate funding, they can't count ECE students into attendance of everyone who's showing up every day to that school, which is crap, because they're still students and they're still DPS teachers that are being paid to teach them. But because they're 3 and 4, they're not acknowledged in the counting of kids there. So technically we are actually hitting our number. Like, we are hitting our number. They're just doing anything they can to go around the fact that we are. And to know that they were going to do this last summer in 2021 is just mind-boggling, because we didn't know about this until just now, with no answers.
And they were lied to. Like, all these parents were lied to. Previous to this, the Colorado Department of Public Education had made promises saying they would wait till 2024. There had been a threat of school closures before, and all the schools were, again, in minority places. And then that got pushed off. They said to all these parents, to all the people involved, we're going to wait till 2024 so we can do a better survey of this. And so Colorado Department of Public Education said that, and then this was just going on the whole time in the background. While everyone was told we'll wait till 2024, Denver Public Schools was meeting with this board they created to close these schools anyways. So what's the conflict for, and what good does it do the kids? How does that conflict between Denver Public Schools and Colorado Department of Education, Public Education, how is that helpful to any kids?
You don't take a school that's thriving and close that school down and put it in a school that's staggering. No, that's backwards. You put those kids in other schools that are thriving, so that they have the opportunity that those kids have and to thrive too. Obviously, there's a problem, and there were so many complaints about how the principal handles kids and parents, how teachers handle children, parents. Like, this school is not an ideal school. It's just in a predominantly white neighborhood, and it bothers me to my core, because it's like, it reminds me of just back when in slave times, of our Jim Crow times, where we were getting rid of the slavery laws and things that was done to blacks and all these restrictions. We were able to start voting, going to school, things of that sort, and we integrated into their life. And it just hasn't changed. They're doing it still to this day. It's like integrate to them. Learn. We have to confine to what they want us to confine to, not what's fair, what makes sense. It does not make sense to close a school down. Out of 2 schools, you're going to close the one down that's doing the most successful all the way around, all year long, and you're going to put that school with the school that's not doing well. It doesn't, like, I can't. I've played with the idea in so many different, it literally doesn't make any sense. Like, you would want those kids to be in this environment, because obviously this environment is doing something. It's good. It's doing something for our kids that y'all's environment isn't doing for your kids. So I feel like it would have been a better decision if they were going to break down schools and consolidate schools, if they went by performances in that district. We're going to break up whatever schools aren't performing to where they need to be. That way, we're not taking away all these great teachers at Columbia. After next year, they won't have jobs. We're going to take away teachers, good teachers, proven good teachers. We're going to take their jobs away and continue to allow these people who aren't good teachers to hold their jobs. They're just here just to show up every day and get an easy check. Because from what your own staff said at Trevista, they don't care about them kids. They don't, like, your own staff showed up to say there's no passion in that school for education. There's no passion for learning. She felt like she had to make it a point to make them understand in that school that they need more protection for the staff. Like, we don't have these problems at our school. We need no protection for our staff. Like, it's not needed. But she felt so bothered. Whatever happened, whatever she's experienced, it's crazy, because these kids are ECE 3 to 5th grade. It's like, what could they have done to shook this? They shook the hell out of this woman to the point where she's like, I can't even go back next year. On top of all the other reasons she can't go back, one of them being they don't have security for their staff. Like, what is it that these kids are doing at this age? Like, what are y'all doing at home to your children to where they're so angry that they're going to school and they're acting this way? Like, all these things start at home. And if your kids act like this at school, it's something that you're missing at home. And I'm not willing to put my kids at risk of negligent parents.
It was heartbreaking. This whole meeting was heartbreaking because parent after parent came up to the stage. They took their time to come up to the stage and say, my child was in Trevista and they suffered for it. Then several of the parents said their child suffered greatly for it. And they moved that child to Columbian. And it was just a consistently same story. There was there were different unique parts to each one, but the main theme was their child suffered greatly at Trevista, and then they moved to Columbian, and one little girl started speaking and playing with kids, and the whole time she was at Trevista, she didn't speak a word, and she wouldn't play with anyone, and she got no help with that whatsoever. And they said 2 months after she was at Columbian, she started speaking, and her mom said she dropped her off the other day, and her whole class came to hug her, and she was interacting with all the children, and she was crying while she said this. It's genuine. These are hard-fought relationships at this school over years that are just being inconsequential now. They're inconsequential.
Because we're race. And then they said that the way that this is being done, it has never been done like this before. Like, they've done consolidations and school closings, but it was like they have a list of schools and they're going to pick, all schools might not get closed that's on the list. They're just going to do 1 or 2. Well, they decided to handle this one as a take it or leave it package, a bundle pack. So they can't say because Columbian is doing so well, or because Columbian and Bruce Rudolph or whatever is doing so well, we're going to not close those down, and we're going to close these down. They have to say they're going to close all down or they're not going to close any of them down. And that like, the fact that he tried to word it to where he's like, it's never been done before. And I'm not sure why. Like, he tried to word it and play with the words that he's clueless on what's happening when it's clear as day. The reason that they've never done it before, and when they decide to do this take it or leave it package bundle deal, it's all minority schools. They're wiping us out in one handful. In one handful, they're wiping us out.
if you do the math, it's 10 schools, and the school's requirements, one of the requirements was they have less than 215 students because they're all small schools. So if we assume 200 students per school, that's 2,000 students, or 2,000 families. Like, all of them, every single one of them, then impacted by this in one fell swoop. And now those people were given 12 days from, we were told yesterday, so that would be 10 days. It's 10 days. They have 10 days to respond to this.
They didn't even get enough time. The school didn't even get enough notice to tell the parents about what was happening today. We were all finding out yesterday as we were picking our kids up from school that there was going to be some meeting held at they didn't even get a chance to send us a fucking flyer home that said there's going to be a meeting held after school. We had to figure this out the day before the meeting and just be like, we have to cancel anything to be here for this meeting.
They told us the wrong time. They said it was at 3 and it was at 3:30, but we showed up at 3 because we were going to be there, and every parent that could showed up, because what do? Like, they didn't schedule this meeting so teachers could be there to interact with the parents. They didn't schedule this meeting so parents could be there. They didn't.
And the thing is, our school is very, like, one of the most diverse, I guess, when you think about, like, staff. There is a lot of white teachers, but a lot of those white teachers have, like, a lot of different stuff in them. Like, they're half Asian, or, like, they're Hispanic. They're, like, we have a black teacher that's even there. Like, we are a very diverse school. And so that is one thing that, like, we all cling to when it comes to each other. So whenever we look at community, things of that sort, like, that's what we're looking for. Is like us, just everyone who has been with this school for the whole time, like different races, different diversities and things of that sort. Like, those are the things that we're looking at. And so when you then take our kids and our diversity and put it into your schools, then you take our diversity out of our neighborhood. Now you're moving into your neighborhood. You're taking our look. Now you can claim that you're so diverse. You're going to get different funding now. You're going to get, like, they just qualify for so many different things that it's just like, it's just using you. That's it. And especially with the state that's like, could you let her in? Mm-hmm. They knew that our teachers weren't going to be there longer than a year, but they also knew that our relationships with our teacher, being from just looking at all different aspects of different races and diversities and things of that sort, we have these relationships with these teachers. We're comfortable with these teachers. So their idea was to lure us in by saying, we're going to take the teachers and the teachers to be able to be with the kids next year, blah, 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 blah. But then another parent was like, well, what happens after next year? Oh, then the teachers lose their job. Okay, it's just to lure us in for that year and get our kids an accountant for that year. And then you're like, screw you guys who've been here.
Well, then there's nuance to that too. Like, the way they phrased it, will resize the school to make it right after a year. But that's so vague, and everyone knows that a resizing of a company, a resizing of anything, everyone's aware of what that is. That's layoffs. And guess who's going to stay? It's going to be people comfortable already in the dangerous situation, willing to compromise with that dangerous situation. So all the teachers at Columbian that are used to a safe environment, that are used to good places to teach, like healthy places to teach, why would they stay? What's the investment? Are they going to stay and sacrifice their mental health for the kids? I mean, and I'm sure some of them will, but what kind of situation is the state putting them in? That's like, why would the state do that to these kids and to these teachers already, when teachers suffer so much, barely being able to afford things and barely being able to do that? Like, so many teachers we know say, I only teach because I love it. I don't teach because they pay me.
And like this lady was saying earlier in the meeting, that the teachers in Columbia, they make good money. They do. That's a fact. They were one of the only teachers at DPS that didn't have to protest with the other teachers to try to get more money. They were just giving it. Like, their school had found a way to communicate and advocate for their teachers in such a way to where their teachers were covered. They didn't have to do all that. They just was like, we're going to do this for them. We're going to find the funding. We're not going to continue on dragging this out. Like, we're going to take care of them. So now that they have been able to get the funding, get more money, because it costs a lot to live in Denver. And for them to be able to live in Denver, they needed more money. So they went up on the money. They pay them more. They pay them according to what they say they needed. Now, all that is irrelevant. Any success that they made, now it's irrelevant because she said that they're going to have to conform to their payroll and to how they pay and how much they pay. And it does not add up to what Denver city limits is. It just doesn't. These people live here. That's why they were awarded such a different amount than other teachers in different districts, because it's so expensive here. So, like, we're going to move them and make them take a pay cut. And then what? It makes them lose their homes, their cars, their whole everything falls apart because they had a contract that said this is what they were going to make for this amount of years.
Not only a pay cut, but a responsibility increase. But at the same time, like, you'll get more duties and less pay.
It just doesn't make sense. And in a time like this where we have COVID and things of that sort, why are we shoving as many kids as we can in one classroom? And when we are talking about no kid left behind and how important education is for each kid and making sure each kid is caught up, why are we then going to throw them in a classroom of 45 to 50 kids, however many, because he said he had no idea how many kids would be put in the classroom, like, and hope that they are noticed or that they're seen or that they, when they're, whatever that they're lacking in, that it's recognized, that he didn't raise his hand and 25 other kids did too, and he just got forgot because he struggles with things. And then he's overpassed. He's overlooked. They don't want to hold him back because they lose funding if they hold him back. If a kid gets left behind, then they lose a certain amount of funding for that. So then they want to talk you into just keep pushing your kid up, even though they know that he's not learning anything because they need their funding. Funding is all I keep hearing is funding. Money is more important than the education. The looks of my skin color is more important than the education. Who cares if the predominantly, if the wealthy white children or white women or whatever you want to call it, if the affluent white community has to come step down just for 8 hours of their wonderful, perfect day, like, who cares who cares how they feel about it when their kids aren't being educated in their neighborhoods? Like, that is like the biggest problem I believe that they're having, is that seeing their kids go into these communities to get educated. It bothers them. They would rather take our teachers and move them to their community. Then it's not like they had to step down, but rather we had to step up to be with them. It's how it's all perceived.
You know, maintain the status quo. It can't. It just is a disaster. It's a disaster. And ultimately, I guess what we're both struggling with is, like, the main people that are going to suffer the consequences of this are going to be 5th graders and below. It's going to be a whole bunch of 5th graders and below. They're going to suffer serious consequences of all of this. Their communities are falling apart because everything's changing. The routines, the transportation, everything's changing. They're not guaranteed the same teachers. They couldn't guarantee us anything would be consistent.
Like, it's sad. It really is a sad thing, especially when you build a community. Your community reflects you. That's what I've been done for a long time. Like, keep the company you keep around. Watch what communities and what groups and things of that sort that you partake in, because that is a reflection of you. Our community is literally a reflection of all of us. Like, when you go to Columbia and you look around, like, we all reflect each other in some sense. How can they tell us that they're going to put our community, make our community their community, mash our community in with theirs, and then their community is now our community? That's not how that works. I didn't sign up for that community. That's not my community. We don't. Even the parent that they had from the other school that was saying that her kids went there and that it was a very good school and all those things, they're saying that their community is just like our community. Like, she was so far off. Like, look at you and look at us, and then come back and say the same thing. Because if that was the truth, then we would already be meshed. We would already be one community if that's the case. We're not, and it's for a very valid reason.
It was so many parents that were saying exactly that, and then these people from DPS who we never got their names, we never got introduced. There was no formality to this meeting at all. We have no idea who we got to speak to. All we know is we gave them questions and they didn't answer a single one, not a single one, and he showed up in like a $20,000 suit. That's the two things I can tell you about this guy. Like, nuts. It was nuts. His shoes were more expensive than half the people's clothes in the room. It's just out of control. It's so disrespectful. The way that they handled the whole thing. He never said who he was. Nobody introduced themselves. Didn't tell us where they were from. They just started this spiel about how gentrification is the reason that we have to close your school down. And we consulted the community, and it seems fine with y'all. And then the whole community sitting in this room is like, it's not okay. None of us are okay with this. Not a single one of us is okay with this. And very valid reasons. More valid reasons than I can count on both my hands, presented to his face and to all of us in the room. His response was, well, no, this is like the community was okay with this. Like, we talked to the parents and everybody was, and this is while parents are telling him to his face, this is not okay. Is while parents are telling him my child didn't get the support for ADD at the school. They couldn't learn at the school. They didn't get the disability support at the school. They didn't get the principal was talking smack to my child at the school. The principal was talking and arguing with me about my child, saying awful abusive things to me at the school, and there was no response. They had no answers. They had nothing.
I wouldn't mind my kid being switched to a school if it was on the grounds of better education. They were going to be better. They were going to be great. They were going to be learning at a different rate, a different... You put her out there and shut the door for me. We're going to be learning at a different rate. Then I would have been okay with that. But to solely say it's based off of money and our education is better than their education, that's very disturbing. So,
It's sad. To see, I watched Haley get up in front of them on three separate occasions. Like, one time she sat there, and another time she got up to the mic and stood in front of everyone. And all three times she said the same thing. It was the same thing. The first time she got up and she calmly explained, I'm uncomfortable with how you keep saying finances, finances, finances. And it wasn't the only thing she touched on, but to watch her get up 3 separate times with rising levels of emotions and say, the first time, as best she could, with genuine intent, I need you to understand, you're saying finance, 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 and I'm here because I'm education, education, education. We're not even meshing because you're not understanding. I want prioritizing education. And the second time she got up there, she was visibly frustrated. And the third time, she just vocally said, my heart is pounding, my palms are sweaty. I am very upset right now that I'm, for the third time, saying, you keep saying over and over and over, finances, 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 and you don't say education. You've never said education. You didn't mention education. You didn't prioritize education. That was not even part of this discussion.
it's just known in history that anytime black people thrive alone with no assistance, no extra help, when we have formed our own community and we get together and we start to thrive, us Mexicans, Asians, when minorities get together and start thriving, mainly when black people do it, it just immediately gets torn apart and and then it gets played out as if we weren't successful when really we were more successful than they were, and they just take our success and mesh it and put it with theirs, and then it looks like they were better and they were thriving and we were struggling, and we weren't struggling. There was not one time that the board correct us and say that their education was better than our education.
His only response was, well, they're in the green. He kept saying that. He kept saying, these parents are saying things that should break your heart. You're talking about children, young children, like 5, 6 kids being abused by teachers, kids not getting help with ADHD, can't learn how to read, can't speak at all, won't play with kids in kindergarten.
It's just like a lot of problems.
How is that not impactful to someone who's in charge of public schooling? How is that not impactful? How can you stand on that stage and be apathetic to the plight of all these kids?
And then just say, okay, well, listen, other parents. All these other parents have their own experience. You got to get your own experience. That's a great school.
It's in the green.
Despite the staff that came in here and spoke against that quote, or the parents that has transferred their children. How about we look at how many kids got transferred here from that school district? Now we're going to send all of the... You're crazy. Why would you do that? Obviously, this school district's better than that one. All the kids are leaving that one and coming here. Like 30. My mind is still blown by just the fact that it's just 30 kids. They were talking like we were losing hundreds, like 30 kids. 30.
30 kids at $7,500 a piece. That's the numbers. That was their numbers. 30 kids at $7,500 a piece.
And he didn't even want to answer how much they made per kid. He was acting like he had no idea, but then he looked at the principal, and so she just answered it like, you know how much money you're making per kid, but you don't want to get ate up by what comes after that answer. So you was gonna put it on her, but that's how it goes, even in the work history. It's just you're the bottom feeder, so you take all the shit. She took all the shit today, and they did their best to put it on her, but the parents can see right through them. So we made sure we addressed it with who it needed to be addressed with, but they just multiple times deflected and was like, well, we're here for her, or talk to her. She's like, I can't answer that.
And there's no excuse. There's no excuse for the corner they painted her in. The situation that the principal had to be in today is outrageous because they're mashing these two schools together, and like a young child, I think it was maybe 8, asked the question, well, if I have a music teacher now that I like, and there's another music teacher, will I get to keep mine? And he couldn't answer his question. So the kids are grasping this. Like, everyone's grasping what's happening here, and he's just lying to our faces, to everyone's faces still. And this principal on the stage having to be professional and talk to all these parents who are upset and deal with these other people,
knowing she's the one that's guaranteed.
Right.
She's the only one guaranteed to not have a job next year.
There's already a principal hired specifically for that school, and it's unlikely she's going to keep her job. And she had to stand up there straight-faced in front of all of these people hearing we were upset and also know she's not going to get her job.
Yeah, I mean, they made it very clear. They didn't tell us that she was going to keep her job. They told us that it was impossible for her to keep her job because they already have a principal there. And this is what's infuriating. Like, teachers not knowing till probably today that they weren't going to have a job after next year because they were the cover-up. They thought they were just going to blow smoke up our asses and we would be okay with that. We're moving all your teachers with you guys over there. Okay, so for how long though? Like, you're just trying to lure us on the backs of our teachers, then to turn around and fire our teachers after you get all our kids over there. Like, hell no, I'm not allowing it. So I'm going to put the link at the bottom in the description box so that you guys can click it. All you literally have to do is just type your name and submit it. That's it.
Please,
put your name and submit it. We're trying to get to 1,000. We're really close to it, and we just need a lot more. Like, help us get like a few more in as much as possible. If you guys can send it to family, or just grab your grandma or your mom's phone and just do it real quick from there. Send it to their email and do it from their email. Like, we really need to try to save these schools. These minority schools are so important and so detrimental to our community. Like, it's important that kids feel like they're one, or like they're apart. They don't feel apart when they're isolated, when they're the only ones. So hopefully we can get those signatures, save the school, and do more of these videos.
Yeah,
I
was gonna say we've been trying to start this for a while. Haley's been wanting to do it for a long time, and I've been really trying to inspire her to, because it's really good. I think that her perspective and the things she's been through here in Denver is good. It would be really good for her to talk about, good for people to know, and just the more we talk about this, the more we can all understand. Like, if we can just genuinely listen.
And there's an HBCU high school in Denver, Colorado, by the way.
STEAM Academy.
Just so y'all know, it's funny about the HBCU colleges, and so they get really good recommendations and all that stuff to get into better schools. So we are going to probably wrap this video up. You got anything else?
Yeah, no, just subscribe and like, if you, especially if you want to follow up on this. There will be, I'm sure there's news. I'm gonna try and find the footage, but she was recorded. A lot of her questions were, and so were a lot of the other parents at this meeting. So we'll try and add that as we go, and just get all this stuff together so you guys are aware of what's happening.
Yeah. So until next time, guys. See you guys later.
Bye.
Thanks for joining Being Black in Denver. Bye.